He's got one foot in the frying pan and one in the pressure cooker. Believe me, as a bowler, I know that right about now, your bladder feels like an overstuffed vacuum cleaner bag, and your butt is kind of like an about-to-explode bratwurst.
Hey, do you mind? I wasn't talking when you were bowling.
Was I talking out loud?
Welcome to Munsons at the Movies. My name is Kyle. I will once again be your host, joined by the rest of the Munsons. Want to give them a wide berth.
He's what is called a born loser. A real Munson.
And talk a little bit about what's going on in their worlds. We're coming off Thanksgiving, probably still a little stuffed, maybe a little sick. That maybe part is very literal, because we are. But we'll start with James and see how he's doing.
Yeah, man, actually sick. I know I'm not the only one on the podcast, but I just want to be praised for toughing it out and being here with you guys. I'll definitely be coughing off in the sideline, so hopefully you don't have to edit it all out.
I feel like at this point, considering it's a theme, we may have to edit in coughs.
Yeah.
That'll be the transitions, not bowling pins, just your coughs.
I assure you that won't be necessary.
Aubrey, what about you?
I'm not sick. But other than that, not much going on in the weird time in between Thanksgiving break and Christmas break. So, peak attention time for all high school students. They're giving me everything they got. Started watching Spirited Away with my film studies class. We'll see how that goes. This is my first time watching it. I decided to watch that with them. They seemed very into it. I've watched 35 minutes of that movie, and it is very weird. But we'll see about that. Also, The Holdovers, saw that this weekend. Well, I caught up a lot of movies over Thanksgiving break. Saw The Holdovers, which is amazing.
Paul Giamatti.
Like the highest of recommendations on that. Yeah. He kills. Paul Giamatti is so good in that.
Our new fans in the high school classroom, did they have any feedback on the Mila Kunis episode?
Oh, yeah.
No, they have not said anything yet. But, if my history is any indicator, they'll definitely find something and give me tons of feedback because they're great at that part. So I'll keep you guys updated on that.
The long form podcast is just never going to be embraced by your students. So I think you're safe.
I mean, well, it helps that they don't know who Mila Kunis is.
That is true.
Kristen Bell, we might have something to worry about. These are all Frozen babies.
That's a good point.
Thanks for listening once again. If you're here for episode 2, we appreciate you. Case.
I'm going to be in the, I think, majority tonight where I am not feeling well. But unlike James's quest for glory, I'm more motivated by Wally Pipp. And for those that don't know, Wally Pipp is the Yankees first baseman that decided that he needed a game off. So they played a guy named Lou Gehrig who never came out of the lineup for about 35 years.
Yeah, it was like 3,000 games.
Yes. So Wally Pipp is a good lesson for me. So that's why I'm here tonight.
I have a couple quick updates. I think number one, the universe tried to screw me over literally today. I left work around 6 and had a 6 pounds of pressure in my back rear tire, which if you're doing the math, that is not good.
That's a little low. It's a little low.
Little low. Normally you should have 30 to 34, depending on your proclivities. 6 is not good. So I found out I had a 2-inch screw in my tire from the hotel build that's happening near my office because it was fine at lunch. That made life challenging today. But otherwise, I've been really good. I had a great weekend in Pittsburgh. But yes, Lauren, as a resident, Pittsburgh native here, I spent Thanksgiving out in your area and it was lovely. But I went to Kennywood to see the lights.
Is that the Kenny Rogers version of Dolly Parton's theme park? So Dollywood and Kennywood?
Oh, wouldn't it be nice if it was that cool?
It's not that cool.
Did you get some potato patch fries while you were there?
I did. I had bacon cheddar potato patch fries and my stomach was not in a good place for the rest of the evening.
Oh, no.
I'm glad to be here. The world tried to get in my way today, but I was watching a movie until 3 minutes before we recorded, and I'm locked and ready to roll. Also, excited to bring back Lauren Hopkins Price. If that sounds unfamiliar to you, that's because she's got a slightly different last name these days. We're excited to have her.
Yeah.
Lauren is a higher ed professional, and she lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She loves to travel and has been to 10 countries and 40 states, and she's planning a trip to the Maldives next spring. I got that right. And when she's not doing all of these things, Lauren works as a background actor and has worked on over a dozen films and TV shows. She previously joined us for the Angelina Jolie, Maya Rudolph, and Elliot Page episodes Welcome back, Lauren.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me back. It's always a good time.
Do you have any new cool stories about sets that you were on and hanging out with Will Smith and shit like that?
I was thinking about that the other day, and I actually haven't worked on anything in a while. I had a back issue earlier this year. I had disc that was touching my sciatic nerve, so I had leg pain. And then I had surgery in August. But I spent most of the year leading up to that, not feeling real great. So I've not worked on anything recently. But I did see something I had worked on, I think last year. I think it was last fall, maybe. It's called Rustin. Came out recently. Just recently. I haven't seen it yet, but...
Well, and you got married, so that's exciting.
I got married. And then last year we hosted 3 Thanksgivings. And I said I was never doing that again because that's too much.
Wow.
So this year we compromised and had 3 Thanksgivings.
Ah. That is 2023 millennial life with divorced parents on both sides. Things you love to see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're glad to have you back, Lauren.
Yeah, we are.
Excited to have you join us for our Kristen Bell episode, and let's dig in.
Sweet.
I did talk to Rigby. I checked in to make sure he hadn't abandoned us completely. He said that the job is good and that he's working wildly unpredictable hours right now in the evenings, during the mornings, during the days, and he seems to be enjoying it so far. So that's the Rigby update.
My prediction's right.
I hope not. No, we miss him. If he's listening, which I'm sure he will be, we miss you, buddy. Birthdays. December 7th, we have 3 pretty big birthdays, I think. First up, we have Nicholas Hoult. He's done some pretty cool stuff for a younger actor. He was in Mad Max Fury Road, About a Boy, Warm Bodies, the X-Men films, The Great. He was very good in that. People love that show, and The Menu more recently too. So how old is Nicholas Hoult?
This is so tough. He's a great actor.
Who do you play in The Menu?
The guy who brings her to the dinner.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Okay.
Yeah. He's obsessed with the chef and ends up being in on the joke.
Mm-hmm.
Great actor. I'm going to go with 33.
Give me 31.
Oh, that was my backup guess. I hope that's not right.
Yeah, I was going to say 33, so I'll say 32.
I do not like my positioning.
35.
Well, he's turning 34, so whoever was closest under that, I think 33 with Aubrey.
I win. I'm back.
There you go. Good thing you didn't go with your backup.
That's right.
The Quack Attack is back, Jack. Love it. Next up with Ellen Burstyn. She's originally from Detroit, on the Detroit, Michigan themed Folks today with Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. She's been in a ton, but most famous, I would say, Requiem for a Dream, That Mindfuck, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, The Exorcist, The Last Picture Show, Interstellar, and lots more. How old is Ellen Burstyn?
I mean, we know what we're doing here, right? She looks great at 40.
105 years old.
She's old.
I'm going to split the difference between James and Aubrey. 77.
Lauren, I don't know if you heard, but we're at 40, 77, and 105.
79? She's really hard to tell because I feel like she's probably older than she looks.
Because she looks so young.
I mean...
That is not a compliment. That is not a compliment.
For 105, she does.
Lauren can get away with that. We can't. And that's okay. And I hate to break it to all of you, but I have to reward her abhorrent behavior and tell you that Ellen Burstyn is turning 91, and so she wins this.
Oh,
I was sneaky close, though.
You are. You are.
If we're not rewarding that behavior, then it should go to the person who is trying to do the right thing. And I feel like I should win in this case.
This is episode 93, and being a good person gets you nothing in this. Aubrey, you should know this by now. Okay, finally, we have Jeffrey Wright, great actor in his own right, unique guy. He was in a lot of Wes Anderson films, French Dispatch, The Batman, plays the Watcher in the Marvel space, and he's in the Hunger Games films and a bunch of other stuff. How old is Jeffrey Wright?
He's great in Westworld.
So good in Westworld. That's a good shout.
Who did he play in Westworld?
Bernard.
Yep.
Oh, okay, Bernard.
And that's all we can say about that.
He's got that great voice, man. Jeffrey Wright's got a phenomenal voice.
Yeah.
He does. Jeffrey Wright is he's like a legend. He's a terrific actor.
Give me 50.
55.
I think you guys are letting the confident hairline throw you off there. I bet he's younger.
I'm going to say 57.
45.
We love a guess victory because Jeffrey Wright is turning 58, so Lauren takes the last one as well.
Oh my God.
James, you've learned nothing from my time on here. Black don't crack, man. You got to go higher than they're older than they look.
I just thought because he's confidently rocking like the widow's peak and not shaving it off, that I was like, no, he's just got the bad hairline. And other than that, he's actually pretty young.
He just looks like that because he stopped aging.
Well, happy birthday to those three and anybody else whose birthday we missed. All right, this is episode 93. We are creeping closer to 100 episodes. It is wild to think.
Yeah.
And the wheel was pondering between these five actors: Dan Aykroyd, Henry Winkler, Diane Ladd, David Arquette. But it didn't matter because the wheel selected Kristen Bell. I didn't select Kristen Bell. Lauren did not, contrary to popular belief. I promise, with a random generator. Kristen has 111 acting credits, 12 producer credits, 3 writing credits, 23 soundtrack credits, and she's directed one piece. Talk about somebody who's done quite a bit in the entertainment space for not being around terribly long. She was born in the 1980s. She's not Ellen Burstyn, put it that way, all 105 years old of her. But before we dig into those 111 acting credits, we always start with James and see if he can stump us with a little trivia, Fast and Furious style.
Everyone here is aware, but for those of you who are newly listening and from Aubrey's class, there are 3 facts I'm about to read. 2 of them are going to be true about Kristen Bell. 1 of them is not going to be true and is going to be true about one of the many illustrious cast members of the Fast and Furious franchise. Everyone here is going to have to guess which one that is. Fact number 1. She's one of 2 people who was selected as the world's sexiest vegetarian by PETA twice. She's training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by the Gracie family, world-class trainers who are credited with inventing the fighting style. And fact number 3, she would use the name of a celebrity's wife who she was a huge fan of when she would book hotel rooms as an alias. I was embarrassed when she actually met that celebrity and shared that information with them, thinking it was a compliment.
That last one is one of my favorite facts of all time, regardless of who it's about. I think number 2 is the lie, because that is about, and I think it's only fair that I say Ludacris this week to celebrate his coming down from the roof of the dome there in Atlanta. So Ludacris is the one that learned how to fight from the Gracies.
I tried to figure out a way to incorporate that, but there was just no way. I could be like, and Kristen Bell was in the Superdome coming down.
I got to go with fact number 1. I think that's a bold-faced lie because that has to be noted progressive vegetarian Lucas Black. I mean, everything about his personality screams that he would avoid all forms of meat. He absolutely has won it more than once. He probably won it 3 or 4 times. Let's be honest. He's the other person. So I'm with that.
I have no deep explanation because I think it's obvious. It's 2 because it's Cardi B.
She can throw fists is what you're saying.
He looks like she knows how to fight.
Yes.
What you got, Lauren?
Well, I feel like number 2 is the lie, but you all will be pleased to know that I still have seen no Fast and the Furious movies other than the illustrious Tokyo Drift.
Oh, it's the best one.
Great choice. Great choice.
Proud of you.
Trust me that watching them is not a prereq for, in fact, you are better off if you don't watch them, so it's okay. We'd be disappointed if you did watch one between the next appearance.
Lucas Black is the guy who wins the girl in the race in the opening scene of Tokyo Drift. He wins the guy's girlfriend. I don't know if you remember that riveting scene where the guy bets his own girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
While eating a salad.
Coffee.
Can't wait to be right.
Fact number 1, she was selected as the world's sexiest vegetarian, one of only 2 people who won that twice by PETA. That is true. The other person who won it is Lenny Kravitz, and I think we can all agree he's pretty hot.
Yep.
But when you talk to her about it, she says it's mostly just about health benefits and not about ethics. She won it in 2016 and 2013, and in 2013 her husband also won it, but she made him turn down the award because he was no longer a vegetarian and he felt like he was lying. He was a vegetarian when they first started, but that wasn't the case anymore. Fact number 3, she would use the name of a celebrity's wife who she was a huge fan of when she would book hotel rooms, and embarrassed when she actually met that celebrity, shared that information thinking it was a compliment. That's true, and it was actually about Ted Danson. And they famously worked together on The Good Place, and they're good friends, but she shares how that was one of the first things she shared with him. and didn't get the reaction that she thought she was going to get from him. Just like it mostly just freaked him out when he heard that. And he didn't like, I don't even know how you would process that information receiving it, but they're good friends now and they laugh about it. Most you guessed fact number 2, but fact number 2 is also true. She's actually currently training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the Gracie family, who is world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu trainers. They essentially invented the fighting style. But that's also true about Paul Walker, who had a black belt in it, R.I.P., Vin Diesel, and Jason Momoa. So she actually probably is as trained as they are and should be starring in Fast and Furious movies here anytime.
Is there a reason why she's training with them?
Yeah, the reason she got into it is because her daughter wanted to get into it.
Oh, cool. She's such a cool lady.
Looking up facts for her, it was mostly just like, wow, she's a cool, normal, likable person, and none of these are really sensational.
Abundantly cool, and I'm excited to talk about it. Good job, James. I'm looking forward to more Lucas Black facts in the future. I'm sure he'll pop back in at some point in time.
Of course.
Case, why don't you humor us with a little snapshot in box office history, and let's learn what this Frozen universe has done to her pocketbook.
She's got Frozen 3 coming up because I think her and Dax want to buy a continent, so that's exciting. Her career is sneaky good to me. Obviously aware of her, and I think she's fantastic in a lot of roles, and she's fun to watch and fun to see in interviews, and she just seems like she enjoys her life. And so you always kind of pay attention to people like that. But as I was plugging numbers in, it was shocking to me. The one that was most shocking to me, I would classify her as more of a comedic actress. Her average film budgets are $43.6 million. Wow. And that shocked me because I was not prepared for that large of a number. But as you guys know, I'm a fan of box office profiles where we have complete information. And on her spreadsheet, I've got 35 movies. And only 4 of them are we missing information. So we have a relatively accurate box office comparison. With that, I'll get into her numbers. As I said earlier, she's got a $43.6 million average film budget, which is 41st. She ranks 16th in total box office, which is really impressive because she doesn't have that many titles compared to some of the other people we've looked at. She's 26th in Star Meter at 541. Where she gets beat is critic and fan rankings. She's 55th and 53rd with 53.9 for critics and 58.9 for fans. She obviously crushes it in the box office because of her involvement in films such as Frozen. And she has a 22nd and 52nd in our 2 different box office metrics, which gives her a ranking of 34th.
Wow.
That's actually way higher than I thought it was going to be.
Me as well.
That's higher than I would have guessed.
It affirmed my sneaking suspicion that her pop culture impact is pretty immense, given she hasn't been doing this terribly long.
And I think what surprised me was that what hurt her was not the actual box office metrics, but it was her fan and critic rankings.
When it comes to the critic ranking, she's in a lot of comedies, and those usually get dogged on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But the box office performance, I guess, is what shocks me the most. Obviously, Frozen's like a mega world-class hit. But the other ones, like, I don't know. I don't see a huge lot of moneymakers. That part shocked me.
She's got 15 movies that made over $90 million.
Wow.
She has incredible project choice.
But that runs true with, like, her TV stuff as well. She just seems to be a part of things that hit and hang around.
Mm-hmm.
To me, her career feels longer than it is.
Yeah.
Because I feel like she's been around forever. I wonder if the animated stuff is hurting her, though. Like, as it goes on. Are people associating Frozen with her?
Maybe her voice, but maybe not necessarily her.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably what that part is.
Did you guys come across the story about her daughter with Halloween?
Yeah, it was hysterical.
I was just going to say that.
Her daughter made her dress up as Elsa
2 years in a row.
for Halloween, for those that haven't heard it.
I think her kids have a great sense of humor is how I took that.
And Aubrey, to the point you made earlier about a lot of her projects just hang around, I think that has a lot to do with her. Yeah, I think she's incredibly likable, and I think her performances kind of stay with you, and you may not know a lot about her role going in, but I think you can remember her impact on the project probably more than most.
Well, why don't we dig into it, and we can see if some of our assumptions line up by the end. Appreciate you, Case.
Yeah, man.
We're going to go with her first major role is in 2004. So the early days of Kristen Bell. And this is the part where I pepper you with some things and James fills in the gaps and adds some color commentary to things that I may have missed. So first and foremost, she was born in Huntington Woods, Michigan. My Michigander heart loves that. Her and Dax both. She's from basically where the Detroit Zoo is, right next to Royal Oak.
Okay.
And then Dax is from Milford, which is about 10 minutes down the road from where I lived when I went to high school. So both Michigan kids, born and raised, which is pretty cool.
Were they rivals of yours in sports?
No, Huntington Woods is pretty far away.
What about Milford?
Milford, we would play every now and then. Not very often. Lakeland would have
Bunch
been
of losers.
Yeah, exactly. Her parents divorced at 2. I read that she actually did not love her name of Kristen growing up, and so she went by her middle name of Annie until high school.
Before she went by Anne, she propositioned her family to call her Smurfette, which was her favorite celebrity at the time. And her family said no. And then she said, well, what about Matthew, which was her favorite cousin at the time? And her family also said no. And so she settled on her middle name. Yeah.
There's a lot of negativity in that family. Go with it, people.
No creatives in that family, I'll tell you what. Her first audition for acting was in 92 at the age of 12. And she auditioned to play a banana and a tree in Raggedy Ann and Andy. It's an interesting introduction to the world of acting. Got the parts, let me tell you. Nailed it.
Okay.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, it's all little kid acting roles.
Yeah, hell yeah.
2 roles in one project. I think that's impressive for Smurfette.
Speeding to stardom.
A lot of range.
Range.
By 95, so up until her freshman year, she went to public school, and then she enrolled in Shrine Catholic in Royal Oak, Michigan, right down the road, and started doing drama productions by the mid-90s. She was a theater kid at heart in high school. After high school, she went to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, and where she did more performing arts work, and she actually left just before graduation. I think she was pretty late into her degree, but she left for a Broadway role in 2002. No big deal. If you're not going to finish your degree, you might as well go do something on Broadway. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I feel like if you're in an art school,
Yeah.
Right?
that's probably
You're
an
like, I did it.
acceptable reason. Yeah, it's like, isn't this why we're all here?
Yeah, did they not give her the degree?
Do we know if she ever went back and finished it? I don't know. I didn't read that.
No, I didn't actually see that. My guess is they'll give her like a doctorate like 10 years from now or something.
Honorary degree coming your way, girl.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got a big name. That's all that matters. In my mind, if you're going to the NYU's performing arts school and you end up getting a Broadway role, the degree worked.
Right.
So whether or not you finish it or not depends on whether or not you want something to put on your wall in your office or not. That's what it comes down to. So good for her. But very much a stage actor early on. That's where she got her start. Still, and what I learned researching her is she's just a nerd at heart too. She's just one of the biggest nerds we've covered in 93 episodes, and I think that's fantastic. But her first film role was actually in 1998, Polish Wedding. She played a teenage girl in the background, so it's uncredited, but Gabriel Byrne was in that film, which is fun. But that was her first film role, not meaty enough to qualify for anything we're going to cover. Her second role was in Aubrey's favorite film, Pootie Tang. She played the record exec's daughter. Aubrey is shaking his head for those that can't see us right now and are just listening from afar. He doesn't love this movie. It's an atrocious film with Chris Rock.
With one funny scene. And she's not in it.
It's offensive. She had a line in the film, but it got cut in post, is what I read, unfortunately.
I'm sure she's still torn up about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's the term. I think you take out the "un" and it's fortunately right there. Not the first film that she did over the years that I don't think she wants to associate with. We'll hit that one eventually. For those looking ahead, it's in 2013. You'll get there. In 2002, that Broadway project we talked about, one of them was stepping in to do The Crucible alongside Laura Linney and Liam Neeson in 2002 on Broadway. Kind of a big deal.
What a cast.
Yeah, it is.
Did a little voice work in The Cat Returns as Hiromi in 2002. And then in 2003, she had 4 different small TV spots, right? She's, up-and-coming actor, figuring out, doing some one-off episodes or 1 or 2 episodes for different TV shows during that time. She started a relationship with Kevin Mann in 2003. They were engaged, but they broke up by 2007. They were together about 5 years. And then one of the only other films I noted during this time was a TV movie called Gracie's Choice. She played Gracie, a film with Anne Heche, where she essentially like adopts her brothers because Anne Heche is an awful, awful mother. I watched it. It was for a TV movie. It was okay, but you got to see her show off some of her acting chops early on as an actress, and that's kind of cool to watch. But that's going to take us to our first major role, which is a film called Spartan. It came out in 2004, and it is my review. This was a movie I watched up until about 4 minutes before we recorded, because I guess I wanted it fresh in my mind. It is not about King Leonidas, at least directly, and any Spartans, just in case anybody out there was wondering. It's about the investigation into the kidnapping of the daughter of a high-ranking U.S. government official, and it features performances by some pretty good actors. Val Kilmer is right at the forefront of the film. Derek Luke, who we've talked about that we like. Ed O'Neill, Clark Gregg, and William H. Macy. So some pretty big actors there in the mid-2000s playing prominent roles in the film, and Val Kilmer is at the center of it all. So if you're a Val Kilmer fan, that you want to check out at some point in time. I don't know about you, Lauren, but it felt like in the first act I was watching a longer opening to a Law & Order SVU episode, and not nearly as transfixing as an actual SVU episode.
That sums it up well. I think that was part of my hesitance on it. It felt slow, especially for what I would have expected to be a pretty high-paced action film.
The scores are pretty middle of the road, right? 50 to 60 for this, so it's not aggressively bad or fantastic either. It's kind of right down the middle. David Mamet, who's the director of this, he wanted to write this story that was deeply rooted in real life espionage. So consulting a lot of either current or former spies, basing it off this character who had done some really interesting espionage work. And because of that, the character that Val Kilmer plays is a fucking awful person when it comes to interrogation and getting things across. Think Martin Lawrence in Blue Streak, but more sinister. Right? Think of when he's punching Dave Chappelle through the window. Just think of somebody who just beats the shit out of everyone and kills people to get the answers they want. That's what Val Kilmer is playing as a spy thriller espionage type of film. He and Derek Luke are searching for a character that's played by the lady of our hour, Kristen Bell. For the first hour and 21 minutes of the film, you don't actually get to meet or see Kristen Bell. You just see her photo all over the place because she is the daughter of the politician that they're trying to track down. What you learn, spoiler alert for the three of you who haven't seen it, it's got a lot of Taken vibes. The storyline is very much she's taken into the world of sex trafficking, and he and others have to try to take her out of it. But the turn on all this is that her dad doesn't like her, doesn't like her decisions, and they essentially bury her kidnapping and fake her death because they just kind of want her out of the picture. It's pretty dark. It's real dark. And so there's covert espionage outside of the ranks happening to try to get this girl back by the end of the film. So you don't meet her until about the hour and 21 mark. What I'll say, and Lauren, you can tell me if you think otherwise, when Kristen Bell hits the screen, you notice immediately she's got this really short blonde hair. She's beat up. She's exasperated. She's definitely desperate. She nails her part. I think she absolutely nails the part. And for her first major role in a film, right after the TV movie that is Gracie's Choice, she does a really good job of being unhinged, hopeless. She doesn't want to leave the life. She's like, I don't even want to go home. And you're like, damn, I actually kind of believe her, even though it's fucked up. Why would you want to go to Yemen and be sold into this? But she just despises her father that much. So the film I didn't love, but I thought Kristen Bell was spectacular in her role.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think they mentioned at one point that she had been drugged or was using drugs of some sort, and I feel like she really nailed that character as far as what the things that you mentioned, but she had that vacant expression in her eyes of just complete out of body and disconnected from her own life, and I was like, this is really. So you're really good. She also looks really young. I think she was probably mid-20s at that point, but she did a good job of looking very young.
To compare it, to the Mila Kunis episode when we watched that movie. When I watched that film that nobody else in the world had seen about the kids on Fiji being put through the ringer, and Mila Kunis was playing like a teenager who is a rebel. Like it just not very convincing, right? And I've seen in 93 episodes a lot of like characters playing teenagers where you don't really feel the desperation. You feel it with Kristen Bell's character. I mean, obviously they dress her up well. Her makeup, everything they have set up for her works, but it's about what she brings to the character. And I thought she nailed it. So I was impressed.
I almost feel like they knew their movie was not great, and so they called it Spartan because people would watch it thinking it was about Sparta, which is disappointing.
They didn't fool me.
Reading the trivia, everybody that was in the project had very, very nice things to say about the director, his style, how he wrote, how he treated people on set, and being a part of the project. So while the result wasn't fantastic, everybody seemed to have a really good experience doing it, and good for them, I guess. Maybe not good for us because we had to watch a mediocre product, but good for them that they had a good time.
I think you guys did a great job of laying out this movie that I had never heard of up until this point. My one critique, which basically takes back everything I just said, was not nearly enough talk about Derek Luke. He was on top of the world at this time, and you guys are just not talking about him at all.
He looks menacingly at the camera a bunch. He doesn't have a ton of lines. He's got a few in the front, but he gets his head blown off by a sniper at the end of the movie, which...
Spoiler.
Maybe you won't like it then. Yeah, sorry. I mean, I've already spoiled
I don't want to
enough.
watch this now. This movie's dead to me.
Just like Derek Luke's character? Or
That's too soon. I just found out.
next couple of years before our next review, the big one here in 2004, we have Veronica Mars. She was in 72 episodes of that show between 2004 and 2019. They filmed exclusively in San Diego, so she was living in LA at the time, and then she would drive down on Fridays and Mondays to do the episodes. And I think I saw that she was like 24 playing a 16-year-old in the show. So a little bit of a age difference.
It's about how that goes.
Yep, pretty typical.
I've never seen this, but this is like, is this her biggest thing?
One of.
Or should I say most important to her career?
Probably the one thing that got her the most notoriety.
Because there's like a huge fan base for this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
After Frozen, this is her most noteworthy thing on her resume.
Yeah.
I think the movie was like fan funded by like a Kickstarter. Like,
Yep.
It's got like a huge following. Her being 24 playing a 16-year-old is not shocking because she looks incredibly young for her age even now. And she mentions all the time how she was getting carded for like R-rated movies when she was like in her 30s.
Yep.
She's going to watch movies she's in and she's getting carded.
Right.
I'm here to see Spartan, where my character gets kidnapped by sex traffickers. Well, I'm going to need to see some ID, man. 2005, she played Mary Lane in Reefer Madness, a movie we talked about on the Nev Campbell episode, a campy horror musical that's actually really fun. You don't have to be a stoner or someone who appreciates the stoner lifestyle to enjoy it. It's stupid, but it's kind of fun. Again, I think showing off some of her singing chops.
I know this is not what this podcast is, but should I watch this?
I watched it for this episode, and I was shocked by a lot of things. But the one thing that really made me laugh is they're really taking the piss out of these like propaganda movies against certain things. Part of the propaganda against marijuana is it's going to turn everybody into zombies. And I'm like, okay, that was one area I didn't see this going.
They nailed it.
Kristen Bell's character basically takes one hit off a joint and becomes a complete maniac. There's a PTA meeting, and there's this guy that's in the middle of the room, and he's literally saying everything that the audience is thinking. Because he'd stand up, he goes, "I don't think this is accurate. She took one hit off that joint. That just seems excessive to me." It's an interesting watch, Aubrey. I did enjoy watching it.
Oh, we'll add it to my list.
Aubrey, watch Reefer Madness. It's a good time.
Will do.
Assassin's Creed. She does a voice in that 2007. I just point this out because she's voiced characters in 10 different video games over the years, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, some of those are Frozen games and things like that, but still 10 video games over the years, and usually you run into actors that have like one or two.
Did anybody watch her episode of Hot Ones?
Yeah.
he asked this like really elaborate question about like plots and depth of video games, and she's just like, I don't know. I just thought it was really cool to be in Assassin's Creed.
Respect it.
That seemed to be her take on a lot of things. It's just real casual. Like, oh, this would be cool. Let's do that.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, another big show there in 2007. For 5 years, she did 121 episodes of Gossip Girl. And she essentially played the narrator of the show as the Gossip Girl. Another one that she looks on pretty affectionately.
Veronica Mars was canceled.
That's right.
So she just called up the people at CW and were like, hey, I want to do this thing. And they were like, all right.
But big show. And it came back years later, too. She's seen a few of her projects, a few of her TV shows get revived, which goes to some of the pop culture relevance Case talked about. 2007, though, to Case's point earlier, she starts dating Dax Shepard. They're still together today. They got engaged in 2010, so 3 years later. They got married in 2013. They've had 2 daughters together, both from Michigan. They've been in 3 movies together that I could find, but a pretty cool Hollywood couple.
They've been to Africa.
Nice.
I was in that Hot Ones episode. It was so random. She said she like casually said we were in Rwanda. I was like, what? 2 vacations in Rwanda.
You don't want to judge a place by its worst moment, but I know very little about Rwanda other than a very riveting story told by Don Cheadle.
I was about to say a Don Cheadle movie.
Yeah.
Great Don Cheadle performance.
They go on road trips all the time. She tells a story about how Dax always brings his little buggy that they got to drag everywhere with them. And so she kind of views it as like an emotional support animal that he has to have with him everywhere, even though he never uses it.
It's really funny.
They just seem to have a really fun dynamic.
They have a very fun dynamic.
You know, they're like a great Hollywood couple. Like I feel like you know who they are. Everyone references them. They seem nice. They seem fun.
Midwesterners, they're down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
Like they never seem like they're too good for people.
Yeah, I've listened to his podcast. I listened to quite a few episodes of Armchair Expert. And some of my favorite episodes are when she's on and she just like creates absolute chaos to any schedule or itinerary they had for like what they wanted to cover during that time. And she just like shows up, and I feel like she's her true authentic self. I mean, that's how it comes across, but it's just funny like that it ends up not being anywhere close to the episode that they thought it was going to be.
So what you're saying is she would be Kyle's worst nightmare of a guest on the Munsons. That's what it would be. One of my favorite things about covering actors is me identifying these like pop culture GIF moments that you find. And the one where she's like smiling, I didn't realize was connected to the interview where she talked about the sloth that Dax Shepard got her in their house. Did anybody else see this interview?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
So she's obsessed with sloths. Well, she's telling a story about how much she loves sloths. It's like her favorite animal. And she tells the story about how Dax went out of his way. There's like 2 sloth wranglers in the United States. He got one of them to bring a sloth to their house. And I learned that she gets really overwhelmed with emotion. He didn't tell her what was happening, but he was like, go in the bathroom with the dogs and stay in there, and I'll let you know when you can come out. And she could sense there was a sloth going to be at the house. And she was uncontrollably crying with happiness, and he filmed her doing this. And she authorized him to like show it to the world. And I was like, this couple is just so cool. Ellen was like, and now we have a sloth here. And she literally started crying on air. And Ellen's like, all right, that was a bad joke. My bad. Yeah. Literally, she starts crying because she's like, oh, fuck, a sloth's here. I'm not ready for this. So I thought that was really fun. The last show we'll mention before highest critic score is Heroes. That was a big show in the late 2000s. She played Elle, and she was in 12 episodes of that between 07 and 08.
So this reminded me, and I was like, I watched that show and I don't remember her.
This is such a great point, James.
Went back and I watched, and I didn't watch the whole show, of course, but I was like, why do I not remember her? And it's because the first season of Heroes is great. And the second season of Heroes is so catastrophically bad that I stopped watching.
So bad. So bad.
And she's in the second season.
Mm.
And that's like, oh, okay. And her character, based on what I read, was actually pretty interesting. But the writers of that show just like quit life. And I've never seen a show fall off that hard where it was like incredibly riveting, kind of a dud of a season 1 finale. But I was like, nice, season 2 will be great. And season 2 was so bad that I stopped after a few episodes. Like, wow, they just like quit.
I remember seeing the commercials for it. when it was like in its highest of times. It was all over the place.
But dude, like when it first came out, it was huge. It was getting like 14, 15 million viewers an episode. It was like massive, like appointment television.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This show was huge. I loved this show when it came out. I don't remember her, but I realized why I didn't remember her when I watched some of the episodes that she was in. And it's because I didn't know who she was at the time. So this was my introduction to her. The second season is terrible, but I think I know why the second season was bad. Because I think that was the writer's strike year.
Yes, that is what I read online anyway.
The second season of Friday Night Lights was that same year, and that was also atrocious. That's when Jesse Plemons killed a person, and we've all had to just live with that. And it was so sad to see this show fall off that way. I also wonder if this is one of those shows that just doesn't age well, because a lot of shows from that time, even if we just go with Friday Night Lights, which personally I adore that show, a lot of these shows are watchable. People watch them randomly. It'll come up randomly. But Heroes is gone. Like, Heroes is a pop culture relic for the people, the massive amount of people that watch, like the real core base that watched it. They know what you're talking about. No one else knows what's going on.
Right.
And like most of the actors have, like, they've kind of gone away. Like, I don't know what happened to that show. So I'm curious if because the second season looks bad. They were bad episodes. So I wonder if the rest of the show aged as poorly as that one did.
It looked a lot like the show that she's mocking in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, when it's like she's on the show and it's Billy Baldwin like getting off like dead guy jokes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It looked a lot like that, and the first season was not like that.
One of the theories I have about Kristen Bell is she's incredibly pleasant to work with. And so I'm surprised that she hasn't done anything else with Tim Kring. He's done some other projects that had some high profile, and so I'm surprised that she hasn't connected with him again to do something else.
I didn't anticipate us having a long discussion on Heroes, but I'm glad we did. I learned some things. And so maybe our listeners will learn some things too.
Watch the first season of Heroes. That's the takeaway.
Well, it's going to take us to highest critic score. So for the second episode in a row, we're going to talk about Forgetting Sarah Marshall. This time it qualifies for one of our reviews. So we did a little bit on the Mila Kunis episode, didn't go terribly deep on there, but Case drew this one, and it's a good film. I feel like every time he gets a review, it's a poopy film these days. So I'm happy for his mental health.
All right, feeling like this is a popular one with the podcast, I'm going to keep my review short. But before I start, I do want to reference the Mila Kunis episode. Mila Kunis has the line of the movie for me, and it was not one that was brought up last time. It's the part where she calls up Jason Segel's room, and she says, "Hey, we're getting a lot of calls about a woman crying hysterically." Jason Segel's like, yeah, I know. I hear it too. It sounds like she's having a tough time.
I'll try to keep it down.
Oh, that part really made me laugh. Forgetting Sarah Marshall is a 2008 American rom-com, and impressively, Nick Stoller. This is his debut as a director. It stars Jason Segel, Mila Kunis, Russell Brand, and the woman of the hour, Kristen Bell. It's an interesting plot because the first probably third of the movie kind of centers on Jason Segel and Kristen Bell, and then the last 2/3 kind of centers on Jason Segel and Mila Kunis. But Kristen Bell plays the girlfriend of Jason Segel and the star of a CSI type TV show. She's been dating Jason Segel. She decides to break it off with him because, as we later learn, she's been having an affair with Russell Brand. To try to get over her, blindly picks a place that he knows Sarah Marshall, who Kristen Bell plays. She loved that place, but he didn't anticipate she would be there. As it turns out, he goes there, she's there, and we have kind of this love square, love triangle. I don't know what you'd call it, with Jason Segel and Mila Kunis and Kristen Bell and Russell Brand. It's a very, very easy movie to watch. I think everybody is really well cast and really efficient in their roles.
The thing I thought was interesting is she said that Veronica Mars had just been canceled the day before she filmed the scene where a character is talking about how her show got canceled. Oh, and so she said when she was doing that scene, she was like, I was able to come from a place of pretty authentic reaction. So it's raw for her in her life when she's doing that scene talking about canceling the show. So I thought that was fascinating.
Kristen Bell as a juxtaposition to Mila Kunis, I find interesting only because of how we played these things out and that they've done a couple of movies together. But I guess the way that I was thinking about this, which isn't the most delicate way to say it, so I don't mean this to be harsh, but to me, Kristen Bell is the movie star that they wanted Mila Kunis to be. Because I feel like Kristen Bell would make the movies better that Mila Kunis is starring in, including something like Bad Moms, which is probably the one that's the best touch point for me. Where if you just took Mila Kunis out, put Kristen Bell in that role, that movie becomes much better than it already is. I don't know how well that would work in this situation. She is the thing that I find myself loving about this movie, though. Like, I find what she's doing to be really interesting.
One of the things I enjoyed about this movie was seeing Kristen Bell in the role where the character is maybe making some poor moral decisions, because you just think of her as just like, oh, she's just happy and she's just such a good person and she's not going to hurt anybody, and yet here she goes and she hurts Jason Segel. So it's fun to see her kind of on the wrong side of the moral compass.
I like this movie, but I don't love this movie. And I do think one of the reasons why might be because I find it difficult to dislike Kristen Bell's character.
Yeah.
Even though like she does a terrible thing, I like her so much. I'm kind of like, well, maybe there was something else going on and she needed to figure some things out.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of what it is. But she's so likable that, like, not that she did a bad job, but that she's so likable that it bleeds through all the time. And I'm a fan of her.
I feel like they do a pretty good job, like, not making you hate her.
Yeah.
Right. It's just making you more so feel bad for Jason Segel, where it's like, yeah, he was going through a depression and maybe he was kind of in a stalemate and she was becoming like a TV star. Like, I feel like I love the line he says where she's like, brings up like, you just wear like sweatpants every day because now that's like the norm for me myself. And he responds with like, oh, because they're Walmart brand, it's a big deal. But if they were Sean John, it wouldn't be a big deal. I was like, it's funny because like I have like nice sweatpants and then like shitty sweatpants myself. But I feel like they did a good job. Like, yeah, she probably could have went about it a different way, but they grew apart.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like I have quote unquote nice going out to the store sweatpants and
Definitely
stay home and do not leave the house sweatpants.
One is more expensive than the other, I would imagine.
No, they're pretty much all from like Costco or Sam's Club. I had a couple of takeaways from this movie. I meant to look it up, but I just kept thinking to myself about how frequently Jason Segel was naked in this movie. I forget who said it, but somebody made a comment at one point. They're walking through another wedding and they're like, oh, great, another wedding in Hawaii. How original.
Yeah.
And my husband and I both laughed a lot at that because we actually went to a wedding at that hotel at the Turtle Bay Resort earlier this year. Interesting to see the way that they had like repurposed spaces in that hotel for various movie set reasons. And the suite that they upgraded him to was in this like elite of the elite villa things that like we looked it up. It's like $6,000 a night. We were like, cool.
Which, by the way, Kyle, there's a Munson connection to that because he had to clear out because Dakota Fanning was coming in.
Oh, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
Very, very important.
James was talking about the scene where he goes up and he plays his Dracula.
Dracula's Lament.
Yeah.
Dracula's Lament.
If you look in the background, when it's focusing on Mila Kunis's response, there's these two ladies standing at the bar, and one lady, you just see her mouth, "What is this shit?"
Yeah. Yep. I remember that.
the one like older dude at the bar who like actually gets it and was like immediately into it. He's like, hell yeah.
Lauren, the point about him being naked all the time becomes even funnier when you realize Jason Segel essentially wrote the film.
Yeah.
So he wrote himself naked a bunch.
Right. Like I did notice that and I was like, that's a move. That's a choice.
He's like, the character needs to be naked and I guess I'll just be the guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm the man. I respect it.
I think there's something inherently funny about an not out of shape, but not in shape naked man body. I think when done right, it can be very funny.
Dad bod?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Will Ferrell in Old School, like when done right, it can definitely be funny.
All right, so between this and our next review, it's only a year. So in the one project to note is one of Case's favorite things, and that's Party Down. He talks about it all the time. Is it Uda?
Uda.
I assume it's pronounced Uda. She's in 2 episodes between 2009 and 2010.
This is one of the most underrated, best written comedy series on cable. It's just such a good show. And Uda, if I remember correctly, is like this really uptight event coordinator that they have to work with. And she's really kind of a bitch. Again, it's a nice change of speed for her because you're like, I hate this lady. But then you're like, yeah, but it's Kristen Bell. So maybe I don't hate her. If she was in this show, that just adds more credibility to her awesomeness.
Worth something on your scale.
For sure.
All right, lowest critic score. What we're going to call Aubrey's redemption of Couples Retreat, because I know he's a fan of this movie, and she plays Cynthia, 2009, and I mean the ratings for it are not great at 10% from the critics, and so let's see what Aubrey has to say. If he's going to jive with it, or if he's here to, fight the battle.
I have heard from some that my taste in movies can run really bad. Evidence of this for some, not me, would be that when I gave my kids in my film studies class a chance to do their midterm, they had to watch a movie that's one of my favorite movies of all time, and they had to talk to me about it. And one of those movies is Deep Blue Sea, which many think is funny and many think is evidence of this point that I have a bad taste in movies or can run bad. I don't know what they're talking about. That's the greatest movie of all time. I love this movie. Absolutely love this movie. There's no reason for me to talk about plot or anything like that, because basically this movie is from the Adam Sandler school of me and my friends are going to go on vacation and let's just shoot a movie, because that seems like what this is. And these couples go on a retreat, one of which to save their marriage, and then all the marriages go through a whole bunch of stuff. None of it matters. This movie's hilarious. It's a lot of fun. I was reading some of the reviews, and I kind of just chuckled at a lot of them, because if you go into this movie like taking it serious, being like, I'm gonna, watch a film and give criticism, then yeah, none of it makes sense. But that's not what we're doing here. That's not what this movie's trying to do at all. Is it a good time? Is it easy to watch? Are there memorable moments? Is it funny? All of it works for me. I think Kristen Bell and Bateman are amazing. Like, what they're doing is really funny. I'm in on this entire movie. I've seen this a bunch of times. I will watch it a bunch more times. This movie's great.
I see 10%. That number tells me it's like offensively bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it would scream to me, and it's nowhere even close to that. It's dumb, but it's a very watchable dumb film.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a lot of those characters over time, more so than I remember characters from like serious dramas, like Jon Favreau as like the stubborn dude who never got over his high school days, who's, obviously him and Charlotte are not having the best of times, and they're trying to rekindle. Like, I still remember that dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think it should be that low. It's kind of ridiculous.
Rotten Tomatoes, when it comes to comedies, is so hit or miss. Like, especially dumb comedies, it's the one thing that like critics just can't comprehend being entertaining. And the example I always use is Grandma's Boy being like single digits on Rotten Tomatoes. And to be single digits, it's like, in my mind, you barely filmed anything. It's like a kid with an iPhone put something on for 2 hours, and that's like single digits. Like, it has to be bad. And Grandma's Boy is a classic in my mind.
Even the end when he presents them with their spirit animals for, like, it hits.
Yeah.
If you follow the story, it hits. So I just don't get it. I don't understand it.
It's a movie that's a good time. It's made for a purpose to be entertaining. I mean, if you're trying to find something deeper, then sure, this movie's not technically good, but it's a really good time. And so I've never been disappointed watching it. I laughed a lot watching it this time. I think this movie succeeds at what it's supposed to be.
Aubrey going against the face of conventional film criticism.
Which, as a person who loves film criticism also.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the takeaway from this should be, guys, just go watch Deep Blue Sea. It's the greatest movie of all time. Like, that's the takeaway.
But it doesn't have Michelle Williams, so is it?
Okay, well, Michelle Williams would never do that movie like that. So I'm not gonna get into this.
The fact that your students don't think you're the coolest teacher in the world because you had them watch Deep Blue Sea and just talk to you about it is beyond me. I just don't get it.
Well, I mean, I gave them a choice of a lot of movies. Only a handful of kids picked Deep Blue Sea. Those kids obviously passed.
I've been monitoring our reviews, and I haven't seen a huge uptick in that. But Aubrey, if I do, I'll send them your way so you can reward them in the classroom appropriately.
I told you.
Yep.
5 extra points.
Easy. That's easy extra credit, baby. Easy.
They just don't listen.
2009 to 2013. She's very busy. You again, alongside Jamie Lee Curtis in 2010. She played Marnie. A film I watched for that episode. It didn't stick out significantly, but it seemed like a decent time from what I recall.
Oh, that movie's not bad. I was told that it was awful. But however, I've got to point this out because it just is important for someone to say this over and over again. And I know this movie was of a time. I need white people to stop rapping in their movies. I need it to stop happening.
Oh, that's right.
I think that makes it even worse.
Recording artist Mandy Moore rapping, so watch those in glass houses if you know what I mean.
It's an abomination in that film. That movie doesn't deserve that.
Scream 4, she played Chloe, a film with Nev Campbell and Alison Brie, where Alison Brie dies a gruesome death by getting thrown off a parking garage. We'll never forget that moment from that film. I like Scream 4. I like Scream 4. I'm a fan.
I love Scream 4, but can we actually talk about this? Because I feel like we can't.
Why not?
Because talking about her role is a spoiler.
Oh.
We're on like Scream 6 at this point.
You said the statute of limitations is up on this? If you haven't seen Scream 4 yet?
Yeah, please.
We've already had 2 additional Screams figured out,
Yeah, as you say, there's 2 more since then.
As a person who showed his class Scream, most of whom have never seen it, I don't know. I think her bit in this is hilarious. The opening of Scream 4 is amazing.
Yeah.
Like it's truly great.
The series starts to get meta in Scream 4, and it ramps up over the next 2.
But Kristen Bell's only in it for she's less time than Drew Barrymore.
Mm-hmm. Draw the parallel quite clearly there. So.
The opening of that movie is awesome. Also, shouts out to Amy Teagard in Friday Night Lights. She's in the opening as well.
It's the one time that you can put Drew Barrymore, Kristen Bell, and Carmen Electra in the same sentence together to play a similar character.
That's just like a dream of mine. If I was ever to be an extra in any movie, is I would love to be the person, especially in a horror movie, who just is offed immediately. I think, or in just the most cartoonish way. I think that would be fantastic.
House of Lies, another TV show. She did 58 episodes of that between 2012 and 2016. She's had a very successful career on television.
Yes.
Very successful. Has anybody seen this show?
I watched 2 episodes.
Thoughts?
I watched the first 2 episodes. How's a nice way to put this? I did not watch any more episodes after the first 2.
Is it bad or just not your jam?
I think it's bad. I mean, I have a pretty strong rule of you don't judge a show by its pilot which changes a bit now because of how shows are made. But, it takes a while for a TV show to figure out what it is and how it works. I felt like a lot of this just didn't work. And so I'm assuming it gets a lot better because it went on for a while and it was highly regarded.
Yeah.
It was those first 2 episodes were rough. I did not enjoy those.
It's a show about management consultants who trick CEOs to close deals. Don Cheadle.
It's very on the nose. It's very, very on the nose, which I didn't appreciate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good people in this. And I love Don Cheadle. You're going to put Don Cheadle front and center in this? I'm a fan of that, but I couldn't keep going on this one.
She is one of 5 actors that are in every episode of the show. Her, Ben Schwartz, John Cheadle, Josh Lawson, and Adonis Leonard Jr. Those 5.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was a massive show, and Showtime, I mean, they pushed the hell out of this. So They were all in on this TV show.
From what I saw in the brief bits I saw, she plays it pretty straight. The humor kind of gets played off of what they're doing and less of just straight joke telling. But even then, the satire is really not even all that funny because it's not satire. It's just a lot of Don Cheadle looking at the camera and explaining things that kind of already make sense. But then also there's a ton of exposition.
Mm-hmm.
I assume it gets ironed out a little bit later. I don't want to just straight trash the show because I did only watch 2 episodes, but I did not enjoy those 2 that I watched.
So Safety Not Guaranteed is a film that came out in 2012, also features Aubrey Plaza. We did a full review of that on the Aubrey Plaza episode, so if you're interested, go check that out. But what I would say is this is technically her highest critic score, at 91%. Safety Not Guaranteed is a story of these 3 journalists who go interview this guy who's essentially seeking a companion for time travel, played by Mark Duplass. And so it's Aubrey Plaza, Jake Johnson, and Karan Soni who go out there. And I enjoyed it. I didn't rewatch it for this episode, but by hearing those actors, you know it's going to be kind of unique, a little weird. And I think it's well worth the watch if you get an opportunity.
Was I the one who reviewed this movie?
Maybe. I just don't remember Kristen Bell in it, to be completely honest.
Me either. I watched it for the Aubrey Plaza episode.
I think it's a very small role if she's in it.
It's crazy that at this point it's like the amount of movies we've watched where I'm like, I think I did like a full 5, probably longer minute review of this movie.
James, you sure did.
Yeah, I can't tell you at all where she is in this movie.
I don't think anybody can.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, okay.
A movie you shouldn't go watch. I feel confident saying that is Movie 43, one of the biggest film abominations that's been put on screen in the 21st century. She plays fake Supergirl, a movie we've only covered one other time with Chris Pratt, which is shocking because there's so many actors who probably regret being involved in this project, such as Hugh Jackman with testicles hanging from his chin. Just an awful, awful picture, and I'm sure she's ashamed that she was in it.
Yeah, it's bad.
Got 4% from critics.
Yeah, this time they weren't wrong. This was bad.
3 episodes of Parks and Rec in 2013 and 2014. She played Ingrid.
Her character is absolutely hilarious in this.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. She's from Eagleton, and she's basically she's the Leslie Knope of Eagleton. And Eagleton is super fancy and rich and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just that kind of dynamic between her and Leslie, of like her looking down and being like this, like kind of haughty, I'm better than you because I'm richer than you. And that whole dynamic in those little bit of episodes, she's so funny. In a show that is really funny, she comes in and just kind of sets it on fire really quickly.
I actually saw one of the episodes she was in recently because we watch that show at lunchtime sometimes because it's always on. Some of the like gifts that they give or like foods that they're eating are just completely ridiculous and funny.
It works so well because you see these regular like city council meetings where they're in like a school and they're all these like crazy citizens are just yelling at Leslie. And then you go to the Eagleton one and they're they're at like a country club and they're giving away gift bags at the end. It's a really funny bit that they work out really well, and she just fits into it nicely.
I currently live in the town that Eagleton is based off of in Indiana. And I tell you, it is an accurate portrayal of how the people here think. No question. A lot of smiling faces, but they're like judging like very suburban faces. No questions about it.
Are you in Noblesville or Westfield? You're in Westfield, right?
Westfield, yeah.
That's funny because I live in what could be considered the Pawnee of where my area is at.
One of those places where like the big to do is to like vote on something, and it's like, well, should we put in this beautiful roundabout? And I'm like, oh my god, what is going on?
Yeah, we're not doing that here.
And then the last movie for our largest critic gap is the big one we talked about earlier, Frozen. She plays Anna, a movie that is huge in a franchise that is massive, and she can sing. And she loved to be able to bring like a weird, quirky princess to the screen, and I think that's cool for her.
This movie world grossed $1.33 billion. Billion.
With a B.
That song was everywhere.
Let it go.
Uh-huh.
Let it go.
This movie's pretty good.
I think it's a little wild that it's 10 years old already.
Mhm.
I don't think I realized that until recently because I feel like its popularity has not waned in 10 years.
Nope.
It's still incredibly popular for being a decade old.
I frequent Disney quite a bit, and that ride that they have at Epcot, everyone is at that all the time. It's basically impossible to get on. My son loved these movies. Like, it's these things, they just have staying power. I think the first one is pretty good. I don't like the second one all that much, but I think the first one is like legitimately really good.
I think a conversation can be had that Disney has drastically improved its music over the years. And so when it comes to the staying power, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are like 4 or 5 legitimate bangers on this playlist. And as someone who has to play Disney music nonstop in his house, I can say a lot of the Kristen Bell songs are fantastic.
My son he turns 4 Christmas Eve. He was born with only one ear. And then the ear that he does have is underdeveloped. So my son doesn't hear very well. So he has hearing aids, all this kind of stuff. And before he really had hearing aids, we didn't know how well he heard. We kind of could tell because he would watch movies. He's been watching movies for a long time, obviously, all this kind of stuff. And I remember like he loved Frozen for a stretch of time when he was like 2. He loved Frozen. And so he watched it all the time. And I took him to daycare. And I was driving and we were listening to Frozen because I know he liked it. And it was the first time I heard him try to sing, which let me know that he could kind of hear. And it completely changed my relationship with this song and this movie.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Because I hated this song for a really long time.
I love that.
I'm like crying as I'm driving this kid to daycare on like a Tuesday morning in the summer because he's trying to sing Let It Go in the back seat.
Phenomenal story.
That's a great story. That's awesome.
Really cool, Aubrey.
That's cool. I am picturing the poor daycare worker that greeted you at the door and didn't know how to appropriately respond.
It's like, hey, Dad, you doing all right? That's when you show up to daycare and you're like, sorry, I got really bad allergies. Like, my eyes are all messed up. Yeah.
God. That's a great story, man.
Yeah.
She had a really funny line because she eventually got a Hollywood Walk of Fame star. She's like, it won't truly reach its value until someone gets mugged for their purse on the star and they scream, let it go. And someone responds, that's not even her song.
You jumped ahead, James, because there was a point where I was going to talk about she got her Hollywood Walk of Fame star in
There you go.
2019. And I was just doing the research before you talked about it because she got the 2,681st star because her and Idina Menzel got it at the same time. And I was just looking to see when what number David Spades was because he got it in the early 2000s, which is ridiculous. And that's who we always compare it to. I just was wondering how many were between the two.
Hollywood legends. I mean, it goes, who are we looking at? Like, it's like Jack Nicholson, like the greatest actors of all time, David Spade, of course.
I mean, you could only wish you had a Joe Dirt role to share with the world, sir.
It's like Hollywood royalty, Judy Garland, David Spade,
Artie Lang. We just keep it going.
Tyler Perry, the greats.
That's right. Largest critic app is Lauren, so stepping in as our guest Munson in the film is called Some Girls. She played Bobby, and I'm very interested to hear Lauren's take on this this picture. I watched it.
It's a doozy. So this movie came out in 2013. It's written by Neil LaBute, however you say his name, LaBute. And it was adapted from a stage play. And to me, that was really obvious in the dialogue. Some of the back and forth conversation. I mean, the whole movie is just conversations and dialogue, but it very much read like a stage play. Looking at like critic opinions, I was like, I get it. Like, there are a lot of critics who really like that. Basically, it's about a character who doesn't even have a name, which, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily deserve one. But he just goes by Man, and he visits a series of his ex-girlfriends to try and... His intention was to, like, make amends for transgressions and shortcomings when he was in relationships with each of these women. But every conversation just sort of goes off the rails pretty quickly. He's... What's the right word? He's almost pathological. Like, he just has no self-awareness.
He's toxic. He is so toxic. And this, just the experience of him doing this is toxic from the start. Like, let it go, bro. Speaking of let it go. Let it go.
Yeah. He was in some of the situations, because there's several ex-girlfriends, and Kristen Bell plays the last one that you meet. Some of them he just was kind of douchey, or he was just not great because he's not great. But then they also added in a character into the film adaptation that wasn't in the play, and she was the best friend's little sister, and she basically calls him out on some truly egregious behavior.
This is Zoe Kazan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty dark, the shit he...
I think Reggie was her name. It was really dark stuff, and I was like, what is happening, and why is this a movie? Why did this happen? I will say Kristen Bell plays, as I said, the last ex-girlfriend that you see in the movie. She plays a character called Bobby. Because all the girlfriends also were a little bit crazy in their own way. I think she seemed like maybe the most normal and maybe the one that actually breached his complete wall of narcissism a little bit, but even then and then the movie ends, and I don't think he learned anything I don't know what I was supposed to learn.
You learn what not to do when you're thinking about going on a trip and visiting with ex-girlfriends. Just don't. You just don't.
Yeah, like I absolutely understand why this was like critics received this the way that it was. It debuted at South by Southwest, and that totally makes sense. In reading various reviews, a lot of critics said that it was very, very accurate to the play. I mean, obviously aside from adding an entirely separate storyline, but like they really kept the integrity of the play, and that was something that they respected. And I think as someone who loves books turned into movies, I love when they actually stick with it. So maybe that's the plus I will give this movie.
If you're wondering who Neil LaBute is, he's the one who wrote and directed The Wicker Man with Nicolas Cage in 2006. So he gave us not the bees, the bees. Here's $1 million question for you, Lauren. The critic gap is 55 critics, 15 audience. Where do you sit?
Oh, I am with the audience on this.
Good answer.
Yeah, like the same critics that will just eviscerate any comedy because it's just beneath them, I think are the same ones that had anything good to say about this film.
That's more like the tone I was hoping you would take with this. This movie's bizarre.
It is.
This movie's bizarre. I'm here for this. People in the rooms having, smart and interesting conversations. I'm here for all of that. The conceit was something that I still struggled with because I was like, this doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere. But I loved a lot of the people that are in this. Like there's a lot of really good people in this movie.
Yeah.
So I was here for all of that. But this movie it's so like self-indulgent gets thrown around so often.
A good word for it.
It kind of loses meaning. And I feel like this movie is self-indulgent to a man who's in their 30s around the time that this movie came out or when they're watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is very much of a like tortured man. I don't really have any issues, but my life is hard, but let me mine it for something interesting. And all he does is hurt a bunch of people on the way.
And then dig up those wounds years later.
Yeah, it's like this is a bad idea as like a thought exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder if all my ex-girlfriends hate me. Let's go ask them out of nowhere and meet them in hotel rooms. It's weird. And then like all of them are strangely like still trying to get at him in the moment.
Yeah.
Which is weird. What this movie does to Emily Watson is sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's bad. I'm 100% with the audience on this one. I don't know what the critics are doing. 2013 was a weird year for her because we didn't talk about The Lifeguard. The Lifeguard came out in the same year.
I didn't.
The Lifeguard is also bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to talk about it, but it is a weird year because her biggest movie comes out and it's surrounded by a lot of really odd movies.
Yeah, she's got a lot of stuff there that it just wasn't rated well or just kind of off the wall, odd projects.
The Lifeguard isn't something I would compare to this movie, where I think this movie is just downright bad. The Lifeguard, I can see why there's an interesting piece there. It just doesn't come together. But it's a weird year.
Is The Lifeguard the one where she like bangs a high school kid?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I didn't see that movie. I saw her talk about it and I was like, what? I was like, where was that in pop culture? Because I do not remember that story. And she's like, yeah, we didn't think people would focus so much on him being in high school and more on like the love story. I was like, yeah, well, maybe 20 years ago. That is not the case today. I was like, that's a bizarre story to tell.
It's odd. And it never really works in that sense. And what kind of makes the movie fail is that like what she's going through as like an angsty 30-something isn't something that you'd be like, oh, I get why you're having this like quarter life crisis. She's just unsatisfied with her freelance writing job. And so she's just like, oh, I have to go home and start over.
All right, so 2013 is when she has her first child. So I did the research on that one. So the next couple of years are quiet because, hey, new mom, having 2 daughters in that time frame. But the next big thing she kicks off is in 2016. Needed a job, talked to the folks, and kind of got herself in the door to be Eleanor in The Good Place. 50 episodes between 2016 and 2020. Big podcast favorite.
Yep.
It's a really funny show. It's a good show. It's really clever. The writing is, I think, fantastic. And I think it's helped by a cast that you could tell is having a lot of fun with it. The general premise is she dies, and when she gets to the afterlife, she's kind of surprised by how like just okay everything is. And it's not what she expected, and it's like kind of disappointing, and everyone has a ton of questions about it. And like the people that they go to for answers are Ted Danson's one of the characters, and I think he's great in it. But like people are like, oh, so like what religion is correct? And he's like, well, most major religions only get about 5% of it correct. The closest anyone ever came to really guessing what the afterlife was like was this guy in Minnesota named Kyle, who was high on drugs. It's like, and he thought about it. He's like, he got about like 85%, and they turn, and like, we have a picture framed of him in our office. It's just this dude like baked out of his mind on his couch. It's like, all right, this show's pretty clever. It really works from there. And she's fantastic in it. She plays kind of like a shitty version of herself, which I think she does a really good job of.
Yeah, I will get into my hot take mode. I think this is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. This thing is absolutely just amazing. What really does it for me? The original conceit of her getting into the good place, her knowing that she shouldn't be there, and her trying to hide it. And then taking that and turning it into a show that lasts for 4 or 5 seasons and goes through all these different things that talks about philosophy and religion and the way that we view the world and people and the afterlife, all in really clever and smart ways, is absolutely brilliant. And she makes this show go. Like Ted Danson is really funny. The side characters are really funny. She makes this show go in the same way that all great television like comedies have a person at the center who is the heart of it, that emotionally ties you to what's going on. She is that. If you missed it, you have to watch it because it's just absolutely incredible.
She's like, well, how do you decide like where everyone gets to live? It's like, well, everyone gets to live in their dream home. And she's like kind of commenting to herself how she doesn't really like the house she's in. And then like she meets her neighbor, and her neighbor's in an absolute like sprawling mansion, and she's like, wait, what the fuck? Like come on.
Continuing to kill it in the TV game. That's what I hear as well.
Yep. Absolutely.
Start her career in that space and continue to do fantastic work. So a project that Mila Kunis called her about and said, hey, come do this project. You don't even need to read the script. You should do it. And that was Bad Moms. The Bad Moms universe, the Bad Moms Christmas. We enjoy them. This one's with Mila Kunis and Christina Applegate. This is the role that Aubrey says is more interested in what Kristen Bell has going on than Mila Kunis.
I think Bad Moms is a good movie. I will continue to say that on this podcast. I think Bad Moms is a better movie if Kristen Bell is the star. But I don't want to take away from the fact that this movie's good. So is Bad Moms Christmas. Mm-hmm. They're good movies, man. They're a good time. Like, just laugh, don't think about it, and just have a little bit of fun.
Yep. Little raunchy comedy. Got Catherine Hahn being a hot mess. Like, it's just good time. Her shitty son. Like, you just have fun with it. Coming off the Frozen world, right? She's big time Disney person now, and she just gets brought in to do a lot of other like Disney voice projects. And so the thing we didn't mention earlier, she got the Frozen job because she had auditioned for a role in Tangled, didn't get it, and they were like, yeah, we don't think you're a great fit for this, but we've got this other project. And at the time it was called something different. It was essentially 2 years before Frozen came out, but that's essentially what got her into Frozen. And then she did Zootopia in 2016 and also did Ralph Breaks the Internet in 2018, along with Frozen 2 in 2019. So she's carved out a really successful voice acting career for herself out of this as well.
I think Zootopia is great and would be an extended conversation on another podcast because I don't remember her in this. I don't remember that character.
Who's Priscilla? I don't know.
I don't know. But I do know that this movie deserves a much longer conversation because I think it's brilliant.
Yep. That's a pretty cool takedown of race in today's modern age too, through little bunnies and animals.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A film I didn't rewatch for this, but a movie I watched a couple of years ago with Eugenio Derbez is How to Be a Latin Lover. She played Cindy. I think she's only in like one scene in the movie, but if you like Eugenio Derbez and you like kind of silly comedies, that's a good watch too. Small role in that. And then in 2017, she did 1 to 4 episodes of a bunch of big shows. BoJack Horseman, Family Guy, The Simpsons, and Big Mouth. So just doing a ton of good TV. 2017, I think the third of 3 films that she did with her husband. She played Karen in Chips alongside Dax.
Yeah, Dax directed this, and she had to convince him to put her into it. She convinced him to put her as like the villain bad girl. And he's just like, you're too likable. I don't know. And she convinced him to do it. And it is funny that he didn't want to initially put her in because she's too nice.
Also, Maya Rudolph is in this, and Adrian Brody.
Cast in this is stacked. It's a good cast.
Technically, her highest critic score is a documentary called Pandas in 2018, where she's the narrator, but we can't do that. I mean, we could, I guess, to talk about her ability as a narrator. We've never done that. Maybe we'll punish Case with that in the future. We'll see. TBD. But that's technically her highest critic score at 100%.
This documentary world grossed $7.6 million.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a return for a documentary.
Yeah, it is.
We'll take that every time. And then the last thing we'll mention for our final review is her and her husband started their own company organization in 2019 called Hello Bello.
They were making pretty good money. It was plant-based baby care products. And, her and her husband are incredibly environmentally friendly. And they're also pretty charitable people. And so they wanted to make like affordable baby stuff. And they said they were making over $25 million a year in annual revenue. And then she started a couple other companies. And by like 2023, they had to file for bankruptcy. Honestly, it's like anyone else who files for bankruptcy. Sometimes it could just be like, we just don't want to pay all the bills. And so we're just going to close up shop. And that's on us.
She's done a ton of philanthropic work and been involved in lots of organizations. I thought this one was interesting.
If anybody's interested in finding out her charities and causes, there's a website called kristen-bell.org. And they outline her career in great detail. And they have a portion in there of charity and causes. And it looks like it's about 19 of them. Pretty badass.
The fan accounts are working over there is what I hear.
It's great.
Okay.
You know I'm a sucker for a good fan account.
Well, you know what James is a sucker for? He's a sucker for coupons. And that's going to take us to our final review of the night. And that is 2021's Queen Pins, where she plays Connie, a coupon aficionado.
Ooh.
And James has the review.
So Queen Pins has a 48% critic score, 82% audience score, and is a 2021 comedy film written and directed by Aaron Gutta and Gitta Polapilli. I probably butchered that, and I apologize. Stars Kristen Bell, Kirby Howell-Baptiste, Paul Walter Hauser, who I'm a huge fan of, Baby Rexa, and Vince Vaughn, as well as Joel McHale, and was produced also by Ben Stiller as an executive producer. So pretty good cast, a lot of funny people tied to it. It's actually based on a true story from about a decade earlier of 3 women in Arizona who were raided by the Arizona Police Department. And when they got raided, they found about $25 million worth of fake coupons, 22 assault weapons, and 21 cars that they had bought. And so we're talking like Lambos and a 40-foot boat. So
damn,
these are just suburban housewives, and they did this. And the story made national news, and they kind of took that as the premise. And so it was more inspired by than an actual reenactment of that story. This movie was released in the US and was a box office bomb. It took about $20 million to make, only made about $1.2 million before it was bought by Paramount. And the Ben Stiller production company was like, can you just pay us what we paid to produce it so we get our money back? And they paid him $20 million. It's like, yeah, it's all yours. Here, enjoy it. I don't know how this movie got 82% from the audience. My guess is that they like the original story, because when you watch the movie, it's like a mashup of a handful of different genres into one. It's about these 2 women in the suburbs who come up with a coupon scam in which they go and they steal coupons from a factory in Mexico and sell them for half the price online. And they kind of make it seem like they're like coupon wholesalers, which is almost exactly what the people did in real life. And they immediately become like filthy, filthy rich. But like, that's not something that should be like championed. And her character is kind of looked at as like a protagonist a little bit, which is odd because what she's doing is illegal. And so it's like part drama, part comedy, and it just kind of comes across flat. The parts that are full comedy, I will say work, and it's specifically with Paul Walter Hauser and Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
They're very funny together. And Paul Walter Hauser is like perfect at playing this like slow simpleton, and I think he does great in those dramatic roles. But when he really leans into it for a comedic role, I think he's fucking hilarious. And he does that in this, where he's like essentially like loss prevention at like a Walgreens, and he takes his job incredibly seriously. And so much so that he like calls the FBI to get the FBI involved in a coupon scam, and the FBI sends him Vince Vaughn and no one else. And Vince Vaughn the whole time is like the straight man being like, you and I aren't partners. You're like a rent-a-cop who gives a shit about coupons and like arrests like teenagers for stealing gum. He's like, I have an actual gun. I have to shoot people sometimes. And that part's funny, but the movie as a whole doesn't really work. And I gotta be honest, I didn't really like Kristen Bell in this role. It was like, I don't know. It was like kind of, I think when she's funny, I think she's really funny. And they didn't really give her a funny role. They gave her more of like a dramatic kind of anti-hero, and it didn't work for me. So I would definitely side with the critics.
I agree with that assessment. James, you killed it pretty much in every possible way. This movie is a bit odd. It does feel like a combination of several different movies, because it doesn't really, it seems like it's trying to capitalize on the trend of like, we're going to take a controversial story and we're going to be kind of funny about how we tell it, which is like at its most successful, you get something like I, Tonya. And then when it doesn't work, you get something like this, or like Pain Hustlers, the Netflix movie that came out recently with Emily Blunt, is a bit similar to this. It just feels kind of forced instead of like, oh, this is actually like a comedic thing that we're executing. But my biggest problem is just that the movie doesn't paint these people as if they did anything wrong. It spends the entire time convincing you that it's okay what they did and that they probably should do what they did. I think this is becoming more of a trend, because this was one of my issues with like Hustlers. Was like, I'm not 100% sure the movie is saying that what happened here was a bad thing because of who they were hurting. Seems to be.
It's similar. They're stealing from corporate America.
That one is muddy. This one is very clear. Like,
yeah,
who they're stealing from, who cares? Like, because these people have their own issues, and that means it's okay. And like, they give her a whole hero send off and everything. It's bizarre for her to like cut off Joe McHale when he's not a great husband from the small bits that we've seen, but he also didn't seem like someone that was like really oppressive. But he shows up when she's in prison and is rightly so like, yo, what the fuck? And she's like, I want a divorce. And I was like, all right.
I was shocked. I was like, just because your husband and you like, just because he's been mean to you doesn't mean you can steal $40 million from Procter and Gamble. Like, that's not how the world should work. Like,
it's just odd.
I think maybe if they went with more of like a, I guess, Wolf of Wall Street approach, where it's like, you know, this person's a piece of shit and what they're doing is illegal, but we're going to show you like the comedic angles of it.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of gave her like a more sympathetic story. And so instead I was like, who am I rooting for?
Yep.
And so the funniest parts I thought were like the more lowbrow humor, which was Vince Vaughn and Paul Walter Hauser having like fart jokes and like calling each other stupid.
To me, that's a reason to watch this movie. What Paul Walter Hauser does is worth seeing, because that man is really good.
I don't mind it. I think it's pretty harmless, because I don't think people are going to start any coupon scams from watching the movie. But who knows?
No,
I don't know.
The story in real life is more fascinating because it was like cartel shit, where it's like you don't get to that amount of money committing crimes without like sketchy individuals coming around. Hence why these suburban moms had like a lot of guns on deck just in case anyone got frisky. Like they're like, we have a whole arsenal of weapons ready for you.
All right, last thing we'll mention is Paw Patrol, the mighty movie. Janet came out in 2023. Another voice role, what I assume is not the primary character, but just a supporting voice role, because she got lots of money and got kids and family life. She don't need to do a bunch of extra stuff. I'm sure she's fine.
She got that Frozen money.
Yeah, when you got the Frozen money, you got Frozen 3 coming. There's no urgency to have to gotta go back to work. No, you just do mom stuff, and then occasionally Mila Kunis will call you and say, hey, you want to do a role with me? Let's do it. Sounds good. Case, what do we got for top performances?
Well, I found a comprehensive list from the website movieweb.com that was published on May 27th of 23. And I think this is important context for you. According to the websites, while she's known for many acclaimed TV series, she's also appeared in more than 50 films since the late 90s. Looking back at some of them, these are our picks for Kristen Bell's best movies to date. So this is movies only.
Best movies or best roles?
But I think they're going on roles.
Tips. I'm just kidding. Don't. That's not the first guess. That is not the first.
If it was Case's list, that would have been on there.
Couples Retreat.
Couples Retreat is on there.
Oh, Redemption.
Lowest critic? Yeah, redeemed.
Give me Reefer Madness.
Reaper Madness is on there.
Put it on the board.
Bad Moms.
Bad Moms is on there.
I bet Veronica Mars the movie is on there.
Oh, yeah.
Veronica Mars the movie is on there.
I would assume Forgetting Sarah Marshall's on there.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall is on there.
Take a chance over there, Lauren. Come on.
I know, yeah.
Right. I don't think Pootie Tang's going to be on the list, so we're going to take that
Is that
off.
an official guess?
No, Safety Not Guaranteed. Maybe not a big role for her, but a great movie.
Nope. Of the 5 movies we have left, we talked about one of them, we reviewed one of them, and the other 3 we did not talk about.
Ooh.
Oh boy.
Screen 4.
No, sorry.
Haters.
Queen Pin.
The movies that we reviewed, we didn't talk about were Queen Pins, Spartan, and Some Girls. So it's definitely not Some Girls. So maybe Spartan.
God, I hope not.
Spartan is on there.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
We're missing her number 1,
Frozen.
Frozen.
Frozen. There you go.
Yeah.
And then 3 movies we didn't mention.
3 movies we did not talk about. I watched one of them, and I found it to be entertaining.
Big Miracle, 50 Pills,
Nope.
Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Nope.
When in Rome.
Nope. One of them, she's in it with her husband, and they basically share the screen the whole time.
You should just tell us.
Hit and Run
Oh,
was a movie that she starred with her husband in that was quite entertaining. And it had a strange cameo from Bradley Cooper, by the way, which was weird to me. And then Gracie's Choice and Burlesque are the final 2.
No, I don't accept this. Burlesque is an awful movie.
Yeah.
That movie is terrible.
It's their number 10. And according to MovieWeb.com, Kristen Bell's formidable theater talents came to the fore on many occasions during her film career in Burlesque, which was a film that featured the musical and dance talents of artists like Christina Aguilera and Cher herself. Bell proved that she was also multi-talented.
That might all be true. That movie is an abomination.
Yeah. Like, I think that she's multi-talented, but I don't think that's the movie that
we need to talk about.
showcases that for people.
All right, 2 questions, Case. What number is Reefer Madness? That's my first question.
Number 3.
All right, and that answers part of my second question, which is what is the top 3? Frozen,
Frozen, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and Reefer
and
Madness.
Reefer Madness. Yes, let's go, baby.
Yo, what a top 3. What a top 3.
She killed it in Reefer Madness.
What a combo! All right, that's good momentum to get us into the Munson Meter. What we do, we rate every actor on a scale of 0 to 100 based on a variety of factors that could include longevity, project choice, pop culture impact, their acting range, awards footprint, other talents, personal life, comedic chops, box office success, or anything else that matters to us as Munsons. So this time we will start with James to get us kicked off.
When I think of Kristen Bell, I think of someone who's just incredibly likable. I think I like her more and more when I hear her do interviews. She just seems so down to earth and someone that I understand why other actors immediately are drawn to her as on a personal level. And she's always, oh, I'm great friends with so-and-so. I'm great friends with so-and-so. And it seems to be because she is just so down to earth and seems to have a really good home life as well. When it comes to her roles, I think she's thriving when she's being funny because I think she's naturally funny. And so the roles I like the best from her are those. And so I think even though we're Munsons at the movies, a lot of her sitcoms, I think, is where she thrives. In her personal life, she's incredibly driven when it comes to nonprofit work, which is something I respect. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give her a 70.
Right. Case.
So my usual disclaimer, there's zero science to this, and these are just the numbers that are coming into my head as I think about this. I agree with everything James said. Incredibly likable, To me, it seems like people enjoy working with her. I think she's carved out an incredible acting career for somebody who, in an interview, I heard her say that the feedback she got when she was first starting was she's not pretty enough to be the beautiful girl, and she's not quirky enough to be the funny girl. And her to carve out the career that she has made in spite of that weird feedback. And I think she's a really underrated actress. I think her acting abilities are very, very high, and I enjoy everything she's in. And so I'm going to give her let's give her an 83.
Oh, casual high score. I like it. All right.
Yeah, 83.
Let's go. Let's go. All right, Lauren, our guest Munson, you're up.
Well, I agree with everything that's already been said. I feel like in working background in movies, like I have seen actors that like it was very disappointing to meet them in person or see what they're like in real life. Not necessarily unexpected in some cases, but like, you know, like Kristen Stewart was exactly how I thought she would be. Like disappointing. And then there's other actors that have just been an absolute delight. And I feel pretty confident in saying that I think that Kristen Bell would be in the delightful category. You know, to your comment about like not being pretty enough to be the pretty girl or like funny enough to be the funny girl, like she's not necessarily my favorite actress of all time. But other than the weird movies that are just weird or bad on their own accord, I genuinely enjoy her in everything that I watch her in. Love that she cares about people besides herself and about people outside of Hollywood and like is aware of like how the rest of the country and how the rest of the world lives. Because I think sometimes it can be very easy to get into the Los Angeles bubble and like lose all touch with reality. And so with all of that, I am going to give her an 80.
I peppered in quite a bit of the things I really liked about her. So outside of those notes, a few pieces that I mentioned that stood out to me when I was scoring her. First and foremost, I think she does comedy well, but I also think she does unhinged well. And that's something I noted in a bunch of different roles. It goes to show some pretty significant range if you can do the sassy, sarcastic comedy while also just being an unhinged, crazy person on screen too. We've seen some performers who can't do that. And so I think that's interesting for her scoring. Obviously, the Midwestern Michigan roots, that's going to get bonus points from me. She's going to get bonus points for the Frozen pop culture because that's huge. I think she's a damn good singer, and so that takes some points in my scale too. And then some of the downsides is she's got a lot of duds on her resume as well. I know we sometimes talked about them, other ones we didn't, rightfully so. We probably shouldn't. And she just has done absolutely nothing in the awards space, really, even with minimal like Emmys looks with all those good TV shows. So with all that, I'm still going to give her what I think is a respectable score, which is right around James, and I'm going to give her 71. And Aubrey is going to round us out.
There's not much to add. Well, for me, this is always the trickiest part because I'm trying to really kind of mine them for what they do on screen and what their ability is and really kind of analyze acting. When I see this as more of just a way for me to learn and see these different type of things. So with Kristen Bell, it's different because she's like a star. She just shows up and is interesting. And so it's hard to really assess any of that kind of stuff because she has the thing that all great actors have. She just shows up and is immediately taking your attention. And so anytime I see her, I'm happy that she's on screen. Even in bad movies, I'm glad she's there. Even when I think that she's not doing the best, I still am just like giving it the benefit of the doubt because I like her. She's very likable. But, with the award stuff or any kind of recognition for just straight like ability, it wasn't there. I think she should have probably got some for The Good Place and things like that. But I think she's a good actor, very charismatic, definitely a movie star, very funny. So I'm going to give her a 73.
All right. With that gives Kristen Bell a 75.4, which puts her tied with Neve Campbell at 39th place out of 93. Case, what was the number we said on the front end?
34th.
It's remarkable.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
We're pretty good. Every time we come back to it, I feel like obviously there's like 5 or 6 people giving scores usually, so like we can't really cheat. But whenever we go back, it's always remarkable how close we are.
Yeah, they're sandwiched by Michael Sheen just ahead of them and Keith David just below them. The Reefer Madness crew right there,
Mm-hmm.
ranked in 39th. I think if we cover anybody else from that movie, we already predetermined where they're going to go. All right, Aubrey, what does she got coming?
One really big thing and one interesting thing. The big thing is Frozen 3. No way of avoiding that. So just brace yourselves for when that comes, which it's still in pre-production, so you got some time. Then the other thing she has in pre-production, which is a musical, which just off that gets me really excited because I love musicals and I love seeing people that are specifically talented at musicals do them. And so she has one called Molly and the Moon. The very small description is a baby struggling to survive to go home with its parents and start life. And it's her and Jonathan Groff. So I am very interested in this. While that description doesn't give me a lot and is a bit odd, if you say musical and Kristen Bell and Jonathan Groff, I will watch it.
Fair. I think that's extremely fair. All right, next episode's going to hit on December 28th, so right after Christmas, and we've got Mark Yerke coming back. He was previously with us for the Christoph Waltz, Chris Tucker, Emily Blunt, and Angela Bassett episode, so this will be his fifth. We're kind of getting in like fifth episode territory for a lot of guests. These are the 5 actors on the wheel. Natalie Portman, Minnie Driver, Elizabeth Moss, Leah Seydoux, and Dermot Mulroney. What do we like or dislike about this list?
Is this the best wheel ever?
I was about to say, I love this list. I would do every one of them and have no reservations about it whatsoever.
I think this is the best wheel I've seen. I would want to do all of these. I think Leah Seydoux's episode would be great because I almost feel like she's underrated and she makes really interesting choices. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth Moss is amazing. Natalie Portman is, listen to the Mila Kunis episode and you'll know what I think about Natalie Portman. It makes sense, I promise.
Dermot Mulroney going from Angels in the Outfield as the deadbeat dad all the way to just like doing really cool projects this year. Like he would be interesting.
He would be really interesting.
He was actually in the first movie that I ever worked background on.
What?
Really? What movie?
It's called Abduction. Came out in 2011, maybe. It stars Taylor Lautner.
I was going to say, is that with Taylor Lautner? I knew it.
That's awesome.
Let's just say Dermot has a pretty big role in the most recent Scream 6 film. That's all I'll say to that.
He's also in like every romantic comedy in like the early 90s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's a snack. Righteous Gemstones, obviously a big show. He's in that as well. Elizabeth Moss, Scientologist, borderline crazy person, but also incredible actress. And so we'd watch some great films there with her. Lizzie Moss.
Invisible Man's awesome.
Minnie Driver is like the one I don't know a ton about, but I've liked her in most of the things I've seen her in. And I have Good Will Hunting's one of my 3 favorite movies of all time. So I'm always going to be interested in a Minnie Driver episode.
I saw Natalie Portman in person once, so I could always tell that story for the 30th time.
I think Aubrey's students would get a second redemption look at Jackie. So we'd talk about that.
Oh.
Then we get to talk about like Natalie's rap on SNL and stuff like that. So
good.
We can have an incredibly uncomfortable discussion about beautiful girls.
That's right. The little girl. Who's that? It was Timothy Hutton that falls for her? Like, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I remember that. Yep. Whew. All right, Lauren, who would you pick?
I think I'd go Dermot Mulroney.
Young Guns.
I think because I like him in all the like rom-coms he was in.
Mm-hmm.
We finally get a wheel with 4 women, and you choose the guy on there. Lauren, come on. What are we doing over here? You know how hard it is to get a wheel with 4 women?
Yeah, I think there's not a bad choice here. And certainly with Mark as your guest Munson, it's going to be a good episode.
All right, so Lauren, you know Mark. We know Mark. What are we thinking? What's the optimal question? What's Mark picking here?
Oh,
looking at that background, Waltz, Tucker, Blunt, Bassett. Tough question, right?
Yeah. I could see him going like Minnie Driver, just to switch it up,
Anybody else have an official guess?
She doesn't decide, and you don't decide, and Gerke doesn't decide, and
definitely not Gerke. Yeah.
The wheel decides, and we'll see what happens. That's good. That's good, Case. No one's ever taken that from me before. I appreciate that. Lauren, you're wonderful. Thanks for being with us again.
Yes.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Do you have any plugs, any wise words for our audience, anything you're working on that you want the world to know about?
This is a weird time in Pittsburgh for as far as like movie projects being filmed. There's less in the cold months, and we're kind of getting into the the gross part of the year. But yeah, hopefully I'll get back to doing something soon. Otherwise, I would just tell you all to stay healthy because apparently that is much easier said than done lately.
Do as we say, not as we do. Lauren, come on.
And keep your dogs healthy. I read about that weird respiratory thing the other day, and I was like, this is horrifying. It's the dogs officially got COVID now.
Oh,
That's awful.
Oh, great. Well, as we wrap things up, you can find us on the X, Munsons at Movies. You can find us on Instagram, Munsons at the Movies. You can email us, munsonsatthemovies@gmail.com. Any final thoughts from Kristen Bell?
Congratulations. You've been named the world's biggest cockroach. This award is given in recognition of your unparalleled lack of decency and humanity. Bravo. You're going to die friendless and alone.
Munsons out.
All right, let's go. Thank you for the education, gentlemen. We've just received a PhD in stupidity. Doctor, shall we?
Hey, what's going on up there? You getting complaints about a woman crying hysterically?
Yeah, you know what? I hear her too, and it sounds like she's having such a hard time. I think it's coming from the floor above me.
You're on the top floor.
I'll try to keep it down.